we had to invent, craft, you might say, a lot of language. And that often happens when you present new ideas. You need sometimes new language to communicate it. And we were trying to capture the reality that that when entities are juxtaposed to each other, usually in proximity or in time, that their meaning tends to transfer from one to the other. So if you have an entity that carries a lot of positive meaning to an observer, then if you juxtapose that entity to another entity, the second entity is apt to benefit from the positive meaning and imagery carried by the first one and improve its own, or vice versa. Juxtaposition of a negatively imaged entity to another entity could drag that other entity down in the eyes of observers in terms of desirability or goodness or various quality dimensions. And so we established first that there was such a thing as image juxtaposition, and secondly that there was such a thing as image transfer from one entity to another, and thirdly that the negative version of that was deviancy image juxtaposition, where a deviant image attached to one entity can get transferred to another entity to which it's juxtaposed. So if a person has a bad image, then an associate of that person may also acquire a bad image through association. And if a building looks bad, then the badness of the appearance of the building is apt to rub off on who uses the building. They too are apt to be not as positively perceived as if the building had a very positive image, and so on. It's surprising that even all of that is very well known in perceptual theory and in attitude change theory, that you do not hear much of it in people's discourse and in human services. And while elements of it have been embraced, for instance, the meaning contained in language terms, that's very well understood these days, and people are very touchy about the right language and so on, that they have not brought that same sophistication to bear on other dimensions of imagery. Well, a very common one is that one deviant group gets juxtaposed to another deviant group. And you get that when services are located close together for the same building, or where people with different impairments are served together or in close proximity to each other, and then the negative image of one of the groups transfers to the other, or when a building with a very bad history is now used as a human service setting. You can have buildings that have glamorous images, glamorous histories, and you have buildings that may have been associated with crime or vice or something, and you cannot expect that that people will absolutely totally ignore these things. They may not be conscious how they are affected, but we know that people are affected by what they know. Activities, a lot of activities carried on in human services or by devalued people are abnormal. So they have a negative image. and so the negative image of the activity rubs off onto the people who are engaged in it. A very favorite activity in a lot of work programs, had something to do with garbage or recycling, and that's socially a desirable activity, but it is not a garbage and things like that don't have positive images. They have negative images, and so when you consistently see a particular group of people involved in that kind of work, then that group is put at the risk of being garbage images, particularly if they were already stereotyped as cast off, surplus people or something like that. One thing you don't want to do is to play into pre-existing stereotypes. This is one of the strong themes in social role valorization. Don't play into pre-existing negative stereotypes. Counteract them. Elicit stereotypes that are just the opposite to the negative ones. Or the object of pity or charity you find in the media all the time, and in fact a lot of the efforts to raise funds on behalf of societally devalued people seize upon those pity and charity images, which is successful in raising funds. People respond to by being generous and donating money, but it continues to emphasize the negative stereotypes that people have had for maybe thousands of years of a particular class of person.